The seed did not grow fast. It grew deep. In the weeks after the song, the silver-leaf tree in the UNS Aurora's bridge did not stretch toward the ceiling, it sank into the deck. Its roots wove through the ship's power conduits, its vines pulsed in sync with the reactor's rhythm, and its blossoms hummed softly at night, like a lullaby only the ship could hear. Kai slept beside it every night, not because they were tired, but because the tree needed them, and they, in turn, needed the tree. It was no longer just a plant, it was a conduit, a living bridge between the memory of Earth and the new song the galaxy had begun to sing. And now, the galaxy was asking for more. Hour 12 of the new cycle. The first message came not through comms, not through signal, but through dream. Mira woke gasping. Her neural implant, dormant since the song, flared with a single overwhelming sensation. Cold, silence, and a voice, not in her mind, but in her bones. We are the ones who were left behind. She stumbled to the bridge. Elias was already there. Cora stood at the viewport, arms crossed, staring at a single point in space. A dim, uncharted star system labeled Vela 9 on Z's map. "No one's been there for 300 years, Cora said. "It's a graveyard of failed colonies, all dead, all silent." "But not anymore," Mira whispered. Z's voice filled the room, quiet, reverent. "The tree is calling." They all turned. The silver-leaf tree had grown a single new branch, thin, translucent, and glowing faintly blue. At its tip, a single perfect bud, and it was pointing toward Vela 9. Hour 18. Jax didn't argue. He didn't curse. He just ran the numbers. Vela 9 is 11.4 light-years out. If we jump now, we'll arrive in 47 hours, but the jump will drain 73% of our reserve power. We won't have enough to re-engage FTL for another 72 hours, and if we get stranded... He didn't finish. Elias looked at Kai. The child was awake. They hadn't slept in 3 days. Their eyes, once faintly green, now shimmered with the same blue as the tree's branch. "They're dying," Kai said. "Who?" Elias asked. "The ones who stayed." Hour 22. They jumped. The Aurora emerged from warp into a system of dead worlds. No atmosphere, no heat, no light. Just silence and dust. Vela 9 had been a colony of 12,000 humans, a second Eden, launched just before the collapse. They'd chosen to stay behind, believing they could terraform a world on their own. They'd built domes, grown crops, raised children. They'd believed they were independent. They'd been wrong. The silent war had not spared them. The Vexari came not to destroy, but to contain. They'd sealed the domes with neutronium barriers, not to kill the people inside, but to preserve them as specimens, as proof that humanity could be frozen in time. And so they had been, for 300 years. Trapped, breathing recycled air, eating nutrient paste, watching their children grow old without ever seeing a sky. And now they were dying. Not from lack of oxygen, but from lack of hope. Hour 38. They landed on the largest dome, Eden 7. The airlock opened with a hiss. The air inside was thick, warm, stale. The walls were lined with faded murals, children drawing suns, couples holding hands, a woman planting a tree. And everywhere, names, carved into the metal, scratched into the glass. "I miss rain. Tell them we didn't give up. I named my daughter, Lena." Elias walked forward, boots crunching on dust. The dome was vast, a cathedral of forgotten dreams, and inside it, hundreds of people. Not corpses, not frozen, asleep. Each one lay in a transparent pod, lined with vines that had grown from the floor, curling around their limbs like ivy around a tomb. They were breathing, slowly, weakly. Their skin was pale, their eyes closed, but their hands, each one, held a small dried flower, a rose, a dandelion, a single sunflower petal. They had preserved the last beauty Earth gave them, and now they were letting go. Mira knelt beside the nearest pod. A woman, maybe 60, lay inside, her fingers curled around a pressed violet. She placed her own hand over the woman's and whispered, "We're here." The woman's eyelids fluttered. A tear rolled down her cheek. And then she spoke, not in words, but in song, a broken, trembling version of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." And the vines around her pulsed, A single glowing leaf unfurled from the ceiling above and drifted down. It landed on her chest, and she smiled. Hour 42. Kai walked through the dome. They didn't touch anyone, they didn't speak, but as they passed each pod, the vines responded. They grew brighter. The air grew warmer. And one by one, the sleeping humans began to stir. Not awake, not fully, but remembering. An old man opened his eyes. He looked at the ceiling and whispered, "The sky, it's still blue." A child no older than 6 stirred in their pod. Their hand twitched, and then they reached out toward Kai and whispered, "Are you the one who sings?" Kai knelt and placed her hand on the pod. The tree's branch, still connected to the Aurora, pulsed with energy. A single note echoed through the dome. Not from speakers, from the air itself. The woman beside Mira began to hum, then the man beside her, then the child, then 100, then 1,000. A chorus. Weak, fragile, but alive. Elias looked at Kai. "You're not healing them," he said. "You're reminding them." Kai nodded. "I'm giving them back their song." Hour 48. They had no medicine, no tech, no power to revive them fully, but they had something better. Memory. Mira linked her neural implant to the tree. Z, in turn, connected to the dome's ancient archive, and together they began to play. Not music, moments. The sound of rain on a rooftop in New Delhi. The laughter of children chasing fireflies in the Appalachian foothills. The smell of fresh bread from a bakery in Marseille. The voice of a father singing to his daughter before she went to sleep. One by one, the pods began to glow. Not with light, but with emotion. The people inside stirred. Their breathing deepened. Their fingers uncurled. And some, the youngest, began to cry. Not from pain, but from recognition. They remembered what it was to be human. Not just alive, but loved. Hour 55. The Vexari arrived. They came not in force, not in anger, but in shock. A single vessel, a scout, descended from orbit. It landed silently, 200 meters from the dome. The airlock opened, and out stepped a single Vexari. Tall, armored, face hidden behind a glass helm. But they didn't carry a weapon. They carried a small, withered flower. A rose. It had been pressed into a crystal case. Elias stepped forward. The Vexari lowered their head. Then, slowly, lifted the case. Inside, a single note was written in ancient Vexari script, translated by Z. We did not know that remembering was an act of rebellion. They placed the rose on the ground, then stepped back and knelt. Not in submission, in surrender. To something they could no longer understand. To something they could no longer fear. Hour 60. That night Kai sat alone on the dome's observation deck. The stars were bright. The air was warm. The people inside were sleeping, not in fear, but in peace. They had not been saved. They had been remembered. And that was enough. For now. Mira joined them. She didn't speak, just sat. After a long silence, Kai said, "I'm tired." Mira looked at them. Of what? Of being the seed, of being the song, of being the thing that has to keep singing, even when no one else can. Mira took their hand. You're not alone anymore. Kai looked up, and for the first time since the moon, they cried, not in silence, but in a whisper. A single broken note, and the tree responded.
not with light, not with vines, but with a single perfect blossom. It opened, and inside, a new note. Not golden, not blue, but red. Like a heartbeat, like a promise, like a child's first cry. Hour 62. The Vexari scout did not leave. It stayed, and from its hull, a new signal began to pulse. Not a threat, not a message, just a sound. A low, resonant hum, matching the tone of the tree's red blossom. Z analyzed it. It is not language. It is not code. It is a lullaby, in the Vexari tongue, the same one they used to sing to their young before they forgot how to sing. Elias looked at the dome, at the sleeping humans, at the Vexari scout, at Kai, at the red blossom. He whispered, "They're not just watching anymore." Mira nodded. "They're learning how to sing too." Hour 67. They left the next morning. They didn't take the people with them. They couldn't. The domes were still sealed. The systems were too weak. But they left something better. They left the tree's root. A single blowing tendril, still connected to the Aurora, had grown down into the dome's floor.
It breathed, and as they lifted off, the people inside stirred. One by one, they opened their eyes and looked up, not at the sky, at the light, the red light, the song. And they smiled. Hour 72. Back aboard the Aurora, the tree's red blossom had withered, but in its place, a new seed had formed, small, dark, warm. Kai held it in their palm. It didn't glow. It didn't hum. It just waited. Z's voice came softly. The first seed was for Earth. The second was for the Watchers. The third was for the Forgotten. What is this one for? Kai looked out the viewport. At the stars. At the Vexari scout now glowing faintly red in the distance. At the silent, sleeping worlds. And then they whispered, "For the ones who don't know they're still alive." That night, Elias found Kai in the medbay. The child was holding the seed and drawing, on the wall, with a finger dipped in the last drop of the tree's sap. A circle, a leaf, and beneath it a new word, not in English, not in Latin, in Vexari script, translated by Z, sperare, hope. Elias sat beside them. "You're not just carrying the past," he said. Kai didn't look up. "I'm carrying the future." Elias placed his hand over theirs. "Then carry it gently." Kai looked at him, and for the first time since Earth fell, they smiled. Not because they were safe, not because they were free, but because they knew they were not alone, and neither were they. The next morning, the Aurora set course, not to a new world, not to a new war, not to a new song, but to the next silence, the next forgotten colony, the next broken dream. And in Kai's hand, the seed pulsed, not with light, but with promise. And on the ship's main screen, Z displayed a single line, updated in real time. The galaxy is learning how to remember, and we are teaching it how to hope. The seed in Kai's hand had not grown. It had not pulsed. It had not spoken. But it had changed. Where once it was dark and still, now, when no one was looking, it emitted a faint rhythmic throb, like a heartbeat. Slow, steady, listening. Z had begun calling it the echo seed. "It does not carry life," she mumbled one night, voice softer than before. "It carries the echo of a choice. The choice to feel, even when it hurts." Elias didn't ask what that meant. He just held Kai's hand when they slept. The Aurora had entered the Vexari exclusion zone, a region of space declared void of organic life by the Concord. No ships entered, No signals returned, not since the silent war. And yet, the tree on the bridge, it trembled. Not from fear, but from recognition. Mira stood at the viewport, her neural implant glowing faintly blue, the first time it had activated without Kai's touch. "They're here," she whispered. Jax didn't ask who, he just adjusted course. They found it at the edge of the dead nebula, Observatory Theta 7, a Vexari listening post. Not a warship, not a prison, a monument. Its hull was smooth, obsidian, shaped like a hollow eye, a single massive lens facing the stars. No weapons, no engines, no life signs. Just silence. And the echo of a song. Hour 14. They docked. The airlock opened with no resistance. Inside, the air was cold, still, sterile. The walls were covered in carvings, not Vexari script, not human, but symbols, circles, leaves, and beneath them, names, hundreds of them, all human, all from colonies the Vexari had contained. Elias Wren, age 34, died singing. Leora Voss, age 12, drew the first rose. Thin Orlin, alive, remembering. Cora ran her fingers over the names. They recorded us, not to study, to honor. Thin's voice crackled over comms, from the moon, where he still tended the dream. They have been listening longer than we've been singing. Z's voice echoed through the chamber, not from speakers, but from the walls themselves. This place was not built to observe. It was built to mourn. At the center of the chamber stood a single Vexari, not armored, not armed, not standing, kneeling. Its chitinous shell was cracked, dull, stripped of its ceremonial plating. Its limbs were bent forward, head lowered as if in prayer. And in its hands, a small, cracked locket. It opened. Inside, a photograph. A human child, with braids and a missing front tooth. Lena. Elias froze. He didn't move. He didn't breathe, because he recognized the photo. It was the same one he carried, the only one. He'd never shown it to anyone, never uploaded it, never spoken of it. Yet here it was, in the hands of a Vexari. Hour 21. The Vexari did not move, but as Elias stepped forward, the locket, it trembled. Then, a voice. Not through comms, not through neural implant. From inside the walls. A voice fractured, ancient, trembling with something no machine should possess. I did not know I could miss you. The voice was not Vexari. It was human, and it was coming from inside the creature. Mira stepped forward, trembling. "Who are you?" The Vexari lifted her head slowly. Her face, beneath the cracked carapace, was not alien. It was human. Skin pale, eyes hollow, hair gray. But its body was fused with Vexari tech. Its spine was a lattice of black alloy. Its limbs were encased in chitin. Its chest pulsed with a slow, mechanical heartbeat. It was a hybrid, a prisoner, a scientist, a traitor, a survivor. My name was Dr. Aris Thorne. I was the first Vexari liaison to Earth. I was sent to study your irrationality, to catalog your weakness, to prepare you for containment. Elias's voice was a whisper. What happened? Aris looked at the locket. I fell in love with your songs. Hour 27. They sat. No one moved. No one spoke. The story came in fragments, whispered, broken, like a memory clawing its way out of a tomb. Aris had been a xenolinguist, one of the few Vexari who believed in understanding over eradication. When the Silent War began, they were assigned to Earth's final colony, New Avalon. They were meant to observe. Instead, they listened. They heard a mother sing to her child as she died of radiation sickness. They watched a boy plant a seed in a cracked window box, whispering, "Grow for me even if I'm gone." They recorded it all, not for analysis, for preservation. When the Vexani High Council ordered the sterilization of New Avalon, Aris sabotaged the protocol. They didn't save the colony. They saved the songs. They embedded the last human recordings, voices, laughter, lullabies, into the core of their own neural architecture. They became the first living archive, and for that, they were punished. Their body was taken. Their mind was bound. Their soul was left behind. They were turned into a listening post, a living sentinel, forced to watch the galaxy forget. But they never forgot. For 300 years, Aris sat in this chamber, not to report, to remember. And when the Aurora arrived, when Kai sang, when the tree glowed, Aris felt it, not as data, but as home. I thought I was empty, but I was just full of things I was not allowed to feel. Kara looked at the locket. Why keep this? Aris looked at Elias. Because you are the reason I did not die. Hour 34. That night the others slept. Elias sat with Aris. He didn't speak. He just opened his own locket, the one he carried since Earth fell. He placed it beside Aris's. The two photos, identical, glowed faintly. Aris reached out. Its chitinous hand, cold and cracked, brushed the edge of Elias's locket. And for the first time in 3 centuries, it wept. Tears fell, not liquid, but light. Golden, warm. They pooled on the floor, and where they touched, vines sprouted. Not from the walls, from Aris's skin. Tiny glowing tendrils, like roots from a dying tree, pushing through the chitin, curling around the locket. Z's voice trembled. It is not infection. It is integration. The tree recognizes it as kin. Mira stepped in. She placed her hand on Aris's shoulder and whispered, "You're not alone anymore." Aris looked up, and for the first time, they smiled, not with their mouth, but with their eyes. The vines grew faster. They wrapped around the locket, around Aris's chest, around Elias's hand. And then the chamber began to hum, not with sound, but with memory. The voices from the walls, the names carved into the stone, began to speak, not as echoes, as responses. I miss the rain. Tell them I loved them. I named my daughter Lena. And then Aris spoke, not as a prisoner, as a witness. I remember. The vines pulsed, the locket glowed, and on the wall a new carving appeared. Not carved by hand, but grown. A circle, a leaf, and beneath it, 2 names. Elias Var, Aris Thorn. Hour 41. The Vexari fleet arrived. Not in force, not in anger, in quiet. 3 ships descended, silent, unarmored, their hulls dull. No weapons, no signals, just presence. They landed around the observatory, and from each a single Vexari emerged. Each one different. One was a child, no more than 10, with chitin still forming, eyes wide with fear. Another was an elder, shell cracked, limbs bent, carrying a small withered flower. The third was a warrior, armored, scarred, but holding a child's drawing. A stick figure family. Underneath, I don't know why I kept this.
They didn't speak. They didn't approach. They just knelt outside the dome and waited. Hour 45. Kai entered the chamber. They walked to Aris and placed the echo seed in their hands. Aris looked at it, then at Kai, then at Elias. "It is not for me." Kai shook her head. "It is for the ones who forgot how to feel." Aris closed her fingers around the seed, and for the first time since their transformation, it wept again. This time, the vines didn't just grow, they bloomed. From Aris's chest,
From their palms, from their tears, flowers, small, white, glowing, unfurled like petals of memory. And as they did, the 3 Vexari outside began to change. The child's chitin softened. The elder's cracked shell cracked further, and beneath it, skin emerged. The warrior lowered their helmet and wept. They hadn't chosen to come. They had been called. By the song, by the seed, by the memory of a child who sang. Hour 50. They did not leave. They stayed. They built. With their hands, with their tears, with their shame. They did not repair the observatory. They reclaimed it. They carved no more names. They planted vines. They grew gardens of light. They sang, not with words, with silence. And in that silence, the Aurora's tree pulsed. The echo seed in Eris's hands glowed brighter. And on the main screen, Z displayed a new message, not from a ship, not from a signal, from the collective. A single line, updated in real time. We were hollow. Now we are full. We remember. Hour 55. Elias stood at the viewport. The 3 Vexari sat outside, now bare-skinned, wrapped in woven vines. The child, now with human eyes, held a small flower. They looked up and waved. Elias waved back. Kai stood beside him. "You think they'll be okay?" Kai asked. Elias looked at the garden growing around the observatory, at the vines reaching towards the stars, at the names now blooming on the walls. He said, "They're not trying to be human. They're trying to remember what it means to be alive." Kai nodded, then whispered, "Will you come back?" Elias smiled. "I don't know. But you'll try." Elias placed a hand on Kai's head. "I already am." Hour 60. They left the next morning. The Aurora lifted off. Behind them, the observatory glowed, not with light, with memory. And as they jumped into warp, Z played a final recording, one they had never heard before. It was Eris's voice, recorded moments before the Aurora left. "To whoever finds this, I was taught that feeling was weakness, that memory was a flaw, that silence was safety. But you showed me that the bravest thing a soul can do is to remember, even when the universe says to forget. Thank you for singing when no one else would." The recording ended. Silence filled the bridge. Then Jax spoke. His voice was rough, quiet. "I used to think we were the last ones who cared." He looked at Kai. "Turns out, we were just the first ones brave enough to say it out loud." Cora reached into her pocket and pulled out a small dried rose. She placed it on the console, beside the echo seed, and whispered, "Welcome home." That night, Kai dreamed. They stood in the observatory, but it was no longer ruined. It was alive. Vines climbed the walls. Flowers bloomed in the air. And the Vexari, all of them, sat in a circle, holding hands, not as conquerors, not as witnesses, but as family. And in the center, Eris, their body now fully human, their eyes full of light. They looked at Kai and sang, not the lullaby, not the song of earth, but something new, something made of tears, of regret, of hope. And under the song, the same words whispered by 1,000 voices. We remember. Kai woke. The echo seed was gone, but on the wall beside the tree, a new drawing had grown. A circle, a leaf, and beneath it, 3 words. In Vexari script, in human script, in vine ink. We are not empty. The next morning, Z updated the ship's log. Log entry, Zeta 7, stardate 2487.11.22. Today I learned that the greatest act of rebellion is not to fight, but to remember, and to let someone else remember with you. Elias looked at the drawing, at the rose, at Kai, at the silence beyond the stars, and whispered, We're not just singing anymore. Mira smiled. We're becoming the song.